Welcome everyone. It's great to have, a number of residents and different people. We've got some observers, we've got residents, we've got Mayor Fraser, and we've got some councillors tonight and some staff. So, and our team, and Mayor Russell, excuse me. The mayor would like to say a few words first, so we'll start with the mayor and then I'll introduce the team.
Good evening, everyone, and welcome here this evening to this session by Zoom. It is certainly not our preferred way to conduct this type of public engagement, but of course, you know the score. Having said that, I think our goals certainly can be achieved by this method here this evening. I want to thank you for your time, and I want to thank you for your input. We are excited, of course, to work with the community, with stakeholders and the public that we have here tonight, our consultants and our staff, to chart the next 10 years of the development in Clarenville. Obviously, a good, comprehensive town plan is essential. It has served us very well in the past. Our first one was produced by a company in Ontario in 1966, and our town has moved along and developed quite well using the 10-year cycle of plans. And I'm very confident that the final product that we will get will be a good one and will be of immense benefit to the town. And again, I want to welcome you this evening and thank you for your participation, and I look forward to your input.
Thank you, Your Worship, and welcome to Councillors Nicol and Pickett. That's great that you could join us. I'm not sure if there are other councillors who are on the line as well from home. I know that Councillor Fillier was interested, and also Councillor Tilley, so they may be on as well. We've got some municipal staff joining us tonight, and we've got a few members of our consulting team. So I'm Lydia Lewicki, I'm a planner. We also have Reg Garland, who's a planner, and Perry Murphy is with Reg, and they're with Plantech Environment Limited. Reg is Perry is our ACE planning tech and mapping technician. And we also have Matthew Mills, who's a landscape architect, and Matthew is the one who's helping direct this Zoom webinar. And he's definitely helping us out with this. And we have another member of our team present, Vanessa Berry. She's a civil engineer with Progressive Engineering Consultants. And there are a number of people sort of in the background that support our consulting team as well. Anyway, we're very pleased to do this. As Mayor Russell said, this is something new. Some of us haven't done a webinar, a Zoom webinar before. Matthew has a lot of experience with this. And, absolutely not our preferred way of doing it, but, these are new times. Typically, what we're presenting tonight is the type of presentation we would normally do in person. And then after, a few slides, we would break up and ask people to look at the zoning map and get feedback, get people to write on the maps, tell us about issues, about things that they like and things that they don't like. So it's going to be a little tricky to present all of that, but we think we've found a way to do it, and we hope that it works. All right. Oops, I need to move this. All right. Matthew?
Over to me.
Yes,
okay.
Over to Matthew.
Yeah, thanks everybody again for joining us. As Lydia mentioned, we have been kind of slowly but surely becoming experts in the field of Zoom engagement, not out of wanting to do so, but needing to do so. So hopefully the meeting goes slowly, or goes smoothly, not slowly. I want to take a second before we get too far into the meeting to just review the tools that will allow all the participants to engage with us. The purpose of the meeting today is really, as Lydia said, to get your feedback and your ideas about the proposed Municipal Plan Development Regulations. And because this is, I mean, maybe over, a lot of us have been meeting by Zoom for the past year. This is probably not new to all of us, but you never know who may be experiencing this for the first time. So I just want to take a second to bring everybody up to speed on the tools. So if you can go to the next slide for me, Lydia. Thank you. Perfect. So throughout the meeting, there will be several spots where Lydia will stop and ask if there are questions or if there's any discussion. And you may have noticed when you joined the room today that everybody's microphones are turned off by default. So during these periods when Lydia asks if there's any questions or discussion, we're certainly happy to unmute anyone who'd like to have the floor to have their input or share some feedback with us. And the tools that will allow you to do that are seen on the screen here. So depending on what type of device you're using, whether it's a laptop or a desktop computer or a tablet like an iPhone or an iPad. But there's three tools in particular you need to kind of keep your eye out for and be aware of, and that is the chat and the Q&A tool. Those allow you to participate by typing your message on your computer or on your tablet. And the other one is the raise hand tool. So the raise hand tool is the one that you'll use if you want to be able to speak and address the room. So once we get to those sessions, if you'd like to be able to submit some feedback or an idea in writing, you use the Q&A or chat tool. Or if you'd like to actually have the floor to speak, you can certainly feel free to use the raise hand tool, and we will unmute your microphone. If you want to take a second, you can certainly feel free to use the chat or Q&A tool at any time. I'll be keeping an eye on it in the background, and you can take a second now to get familiar with the tools and introduce yourself to the room. Next slide, please. Thank you. And the other tool we'll be using is what's called a live poll. These are questions essentially that will pop up on your screen, and they'll look pretty similar to the screenshot that you see there now. These will appear automatically. You don't need to do anything. We'll take care of all that on our end. And all you need to do is basically, Lydia will read out the question, and then we're asking you to please choose your answer, which you can see is labeled there as step number 1. And then when you do choose your answer, just press step number 2, and we will go ahead and tabulate all the results. And worth I guess, highlighting or noting is we'll be sharing those results so that everybody can kind of see what different perspectives are in the room. But there is no way to identify any one individual's response, so all those responses are anonymous. You'll just be seeing the total tabulated results for everybody who responds to those polls. So important to note. And then one final note, we just wanted to, a small piece of housekeeping. We will be recording this session, and the reason we're recording it is to just make sure we have a good record of the feedback that we receive so that we can kind of take it all away and digest it and make sure we don't forget anything. So if anyone has any objections to being recorded, I guess we'll ask that you use the raise hand tool now, but otherwise we'll proceed full steam ahead.
The other advantage of having a recording is that others can view it, so it can be posted on the town's website or to YouTube, and it lets other people view the discussion that we had tonight. Okay, and so I might ask, we have interjected a number of slides throughout the presentation. So about every 6 to 10 slides, we stop and we have a question slide just asking if there's any questions. And because we have around 90 or so slides, it might run more smoothly if you ask your questions or send your chat questions at the point where we have the slide question. And you'll see, and you can send it ahead of time. Matthew will see that, and he can verbalize the question when we come to the question period. Anyway, thank you. All right, so our agenda tonight, we're going to talk about 7 things. Number one, what is planning? We all know the term planning. Most of us have heard, Municipal Plan Development Regulations, but a lot of people don't really know what that means or how they're used or how a council enacts those things and what they really are. What does it mean? We're going to give some highlights of a background report. We've done an extensive background report, so there's some interesting things that we found that we feel should be highlighted today. We're going to review Council's vision statement. The vision statement and the background report are both required under the Urban and Rural Planning Act. And we'd like to share the vision statement with residents and get feedback on that and confirmation. Then we're going to talk about some emerging topics, and these are things that have come up from our own research, from our discussions with stakeholders, and from the results of the SurveyMonkey questionnaire that we had posted a short time ago. Then we're going to look at the zoning map, and Reg is going to talk about the zoning map. What we're going to show you is the overall map, which is very difficult to read because it's so big. And then we've selected a number of specific areas that Reg will discuss and talk about. And then at the very end, we're going to have another session that we call discussion and ask you or put forward the kind of questions we would if we were doing this in person. And then we'll talk about the next steps. All right. So what is planning? Well, planning basically is the ability to manage change. It's about our vision of the community and what we want our community to be in the future. And it's about the goals for the future and strategies to achieve those goals. We plan many things in our life. We plan our lives, we plan our education, we plan our families, and, we plan our communities. Okay, so in planning, there are different interests. So for instance, we have individual interests, and individual interests relate to individuals and their property, their business, their relationship to the community and to others. Then we have what's called common interests, which relate to the entire community. And those are related to land, environment, social and economic issues. And those really reflect what we call the common good. So individual interests and individual interests and the common good affect all of us as residents. And the responsibility of balancing individual interests against the common good is the responsibility of council. And it's really an unenviable task because, sometimes we don't understand how a council decision has been made. We may think a council decision is the wrong decision. We may not like it. Other times we may like a council decision. But the ultimate thing that we need to remember as residents, as council is the duly elected body that we as residents who vote have given the authority to make these decisions. And ultimately in planning, we have a saying, council has the right to be wrong. The other interest that comes into play is provincial interests. So what happens is that when we start this process as planners, we contact the department, now it's called Environment, Climate Change and Municipalities, and they put together a committee called the Intergovernmental Land Use Committee, and ILUC for short. ILUC is responsible for reviewing municipal plans and development regulations and identifying where there are provincial interests. And we get a report, which we share with council and with staff. And ILUC identifies those areas of provincial interest that must be represented in the municipal plan. So some of those areas are, for instance, archaeology, the environment, water resources, protected water supplies, flooding, sea level rise, and on and on. So we'll talk about some of those things today as well. All right, so why do we plan? Well, we plan because we want to protect the things that we love about our community. We plan because we want to maintain our quality of life. And we do planning in order to direct change and land use development to the appropriate places on the land. And the authority for planning comes from the Urban and Rural Planning Act. So it sets out the ground rules that council has to follow. And it describes exactly those sorts of topics and policies and proposals, the topics for which council has to make policies and proposals in the municipal plan. The minister determines the planning area boundary, and council is responsible for administering planning within that planning area boundary. The Act also gives council control over development, control over watersheds and municipal water supply, and control over the types of amenities that council creates and produces in the town. Okay, so I'm just going to talk a little bit about the two documents, and they are binding. That's the other thing to remember. The municipal plan is binding on council and it's binding on residents. So if you have a property or you want to develop something, the goals and the policies and proposals of the municipal plan are binding both on council and on residents. So the municipal plan has about 5 sections. And it sets out the planning context and the history of planning and settlement, the visions, goals, and objectives, land use policies and proposals, and implementation. So it sets out the process and the procedures by which council has to follow in terms of, let's say, amendments, and the process that residents have to follow in terms of seeking approvals, amendments, and so on. The municipal plan also has an associated map called the Generalized Future Land Use Map, which designates land. So that's sort of like large areas, tracts of land that may be called residential or rural or conservation, what have you. And then the zoning map takes that a step further. Okay, the development regulations set out specific standards and regulations for development. So for each type of land use, there will be a section under Section 5, use zones. It's a use zone table, and it sets out the parameters for development on the land. The zoning map also then takes the designated land that may be rural or residential, residential, and then further designates it into other types of categories. So it might be residential medium density, residential low density, rural residential, and all of those zones have their own specific regulations. All right, so the purpose of each document is that, as I said earlier, the municipal plan talks about council's goal for the community for the next 10 years, and then provides policies on things like housing, environment, transportation, recreation, economy, and so on, and also council's budget and financial investment over the next 5-year period. And the development regulations, as I said, give specific standards for each zone. So that would be, for example, what is the minimum lot area in square meters for residential low density? What is the minimum square meters of floor area for residential low density? What is the minimum frontage in meters? What are the yard setbacks? What's the maximum height of the building? So those development standards change for the different type of land use. All right, so when we do a municipal plan review, we look at, we identify land use issues and align them with the vision and the goals. We revise existing vision. Sometimes we revise goals and policies and objections in order to ensure that they comply or that they mesh with new issues that have emerged. We amend sometimes the land use designations and zones, and we update the development standards. And that's kind of like in a nutshell. And in some communities where the planning documents have been updated on a regular basis, according to the Urban and Rural Planning Act, they're supposed to be reviewed and updated every 10 years. Some municipalities don't do that, and that makes our job a lot harder. Where they're updated consistently, our job becomes a lot easier. All right, so any questions? This is one of our question slides, so don't be shy.
Yep, and just a reminder that you can feel free to engage in writing using chat or Q&A, or you can have the floor. If you raise your hand, we're happy to unmute you.
Yeah. Going once, going twice. All right, I'll move on. I'm sure there'll be lots of questions in a little while. Okay, so as I said, the background report is mandated by the Act, and it is submitted with the municipal plan, the development regulations, and the maps. They need to be submitted after council has reviewed them, after the public has reviewed them and had their say, you know, after we've made revisions from those. When those documents are ready, we submit them to the province, and so the background report is submitted at that time as well. The background report is based on a number of different things. Number one, relevant demographic data, data and studies pertaining to land use, and you know, other information that we are aware of, and also some of the consultations. So we've looked at a number of different studies that have been done for Clarenville over the last 10-15 years. The Economic Development Strategy of 2006 and 2009, assessing the factors impacting the sustainability of the Clarenville-Bonavista Vista Rural Secretariat region, Phase 2 report in 2014, a number of engineering reports and studies that have been done by the town's consulting engineer, Meridian. We also looked at the Recreation Master Plan that was produced in 2017 and the ILEC report. So those are, you know, just a smattering of the types of things that we look at to undertake the background report. Okay, so Clarenville is a regional hub, and it has a catchment area of 96,000 people, which is, you know, very interesting. You know, it's pretty much in the kind of center of the province. So you have a large draw, and you draw from a number of different municipalities in your region. Right. So the settlement patterns are very interesting because your municipality has a huge area, 141 square kilometers. But the built-up area is much smaller, and it's primarily of the two original towns of Clarenville and Shoal Harbor that were, came together and now form the town of Clarenville. And the development started along the coastline in low-lying areas and then moved towards the Trans-Canada Highway. So the built-up area is only about 10% of the total municipal area. All right. Whoop. All right. So current land uses, we're obviously looking at that and where they're expanding. So, residential and commercial uses have been growing and will likely continue to grow. These uses are expanding to Shoal Harbor Drive and to the TCH. The road network is also expanding to accommodate this kind of growth. And west of the TCH, we have the protected water supply and White Hills Resort. And, the town has a good mix of recreation and cultural infrastructure and provides good amenities. One of the challenges, of course, is that for development and building is that we have some topography that's very steep, a lot of hills and valleys, and that makes identifying good land for future development a little more challenging. So in terms of the demographic data, we obviously use the census. So we've used the 2016 census data from Stats Canada, the Newfoundland Department of Finance forecasts and community accounts data, Atlantic Provinces Economic Council, which also has a lot of interesting data, and they do a lot of interesting research that affects all 4 Atlantic provinces. And, also, another good source is CMHC. So this data gives us a good insight into the economic health and sustainability of not only the province, but also the community. Okay, so the population of Clarenville is in a kind of an enviable position, and a lot of that has to do with your location and the fact that you're a regional center. So over 7 census periods, Clarenville has had an average growth of 4.8%, which is pretty darn good. According to the 2016 census, your population increased by about 4.3%. And then I like to compare this, with other communities or the economic zone and the province, because it gives us a good indication of where a community sits. So while you had an increase in your population in 2016, the economic zone that you're in, which is Clarenville-Bonavista Vista, had a decrease of 3.1%. And the population of Newfoundland itself increased by 1% in 2016. Community accounts also provide something called residual net migration data. So this is as of 2018, and it's probably increased since then. Residual net migration is the number that you get when you take the change in population from one year to another, you subtract births and deaths, and then you have a number. And if it's a positive number, your population has grown. If it's a negative number, your population has decreased. So your population decreased by another 29 people in 2018, and that may well have increased again since then. Okay, so this slide just shows again the comparison of population stats for Clarenville, the province, and the economic zone. So right off the bat, you can see that the median age in Clarenville is 42, the median age for the province is 46, and the median age for the economic zone is 51. So, relatively speaking, Clarenville is doing slightly better. I suspect that some of your growth over the last number of years, few years, has probably been from people moving into Clarenville, people retiring, moving into Clarenville because they want to be closer to a hospital, the doctor, the dentist, shopping, groceries, you know, and the liquor store. But that's a good thing for Clarenville. Okay, we also look at families. Again, it gives us some indication of, you know, the health of the community. I think the important things here are that the average family size in Clarenville is slightly higher at 2.8, slightly higher than for the province. Your average family income in Clarenville is slightly higher than for the province at $118,000. Percentage of residents in the labor force is also higher, and your unemployment rate is only 11.5%, while for the province it's 15.6%. So again, you know, it shows the health of your community. And then in terms of residential uses, again, which is important because, you know, that's probably one of the largest land uses in any community. You know, we have 1,840 single detached dwellings. The household size, so household size is different than family size. Household size means it could be people that are unrelated living in the same, under the same roof. So your household size is larger than for the province. You have, you know, a 68.9% home ownership, lower than for the province, but basically Newfoundland probably has the highest home ownership stats in the country. Home ownership here is a very important thing, and I think it's a cultural thing as well. Housing prices in Clarenville are slightly higher than they are provincially. Average monthly shelter costs, again, are slightly higher here, $1,163 a month versus $984 for the province. And average rental costs are slightly higher here as well than they are provincially. Okay, something else that is sort of an emerging statistic that I started to kind of see this trend when I was looking at some of the background information for Clarenville, and something that has been identified by CMHC. So CMHC has a threshold for housing affordability, and that threshold is 30% of one's salary, of one's income. So, and CMHC has used the same threshold for decades now. But according to that threshold, if a family or if an individual is spending more than 30% of their income, they could be in a housing affordability problem. And, you know, for instance, we see that because of COVID, people have lost jobs, you know, so there are a number of people that currently are in that kind of situation where they've lost an income and suddenly, you know, that mortgage or that house, that rental is difficult to maintain. But what we're finding now is that we also have seniors and more seniors that are in that threshold. And so we've got, Community Accounts has done some, shown some statistics for seniors that are 55 plus, and the number that are in that threshold where they're spending more than 30% of their income on housing. So for Clarenville, it's slightly higher, 17.5%, as opposed to the province, which is 16.2. And then the 65 plus, that threshold is also, the percentage within that threshold is also higher at 19.2% versus 16.8%. Now, it doesn't mean that you know, all seniors are in distress. It means that some people, you know, are okay living at that, have the means to live in, you know, above that sort of 30% threshold and can manage that. But for some, it may be a problem. And we are seeing in Clarenville that there are developers that are now looking at and building affordable housing, affordable rental housing for seniors at a price point that is, you know, under $1,000 and affordable. In fact, one of the developers with whom I spoke, you know, mentioned that their units are just under construction and were all snapped up immediately. So this I guess, this sort of scenario is common now across the country. And this comes from a document that CMHC put out in October of 2020, and it's called Housing for Older Canadians, the Definitive Guide to the Over 55 Market and Understanding the Market. All right, so in terms of population forecasts, I looked at these because, again, it's very important for communities, you know, to understand where things are going and where, especially in terms of growth and population increase or population decrease. As we all know, our province has a problem in terms of aging and populations that are rapidly aging. So these population forecasts are presented by the Department of Finance, Community Accounts, and some of the information has come from Statistics Canada. So, and these are new as of just a couple of months ago. So as we know, we have an older population and a rapidly aging population. Our birth rate is 1.3, and the population replacement birth rate is 2.1. So that means 2.1 means that's the number of live births we have to have in order to sustain our population number, not to grow it, just to sustain it. We have the lowest birth rate in the country. The other disturbing statistic is that our death rate exceeds our birth rate and has done so since 2012. So that's 9 years. And our in-migration is the main driver of population growth. The projections say until 2040. And this is based on a medium scenario forecast that the Department of Finance has done. So they've done a low, medium, and high, and they're using this medium scenario forecast in order to do planning, planning on a provincial level. So it's forecasted that by 2040, our population growth will be a total of 1.1%. So it's a little disturbing. And so furthermore, the stats say that net migration will offset population declines starting about 2024. There will be improved labor market conditions and labor shortages as a result. So as our seniors age and as the 55 plus people decide to retire and leave work, there will be more openings in the job market. So as our seniors age, they're going to require more healthcare and healthcare that's more specialized and different types of healthcare. And so that will be the driver for net in migration. There will be jobs specifically in those areas. So it's projected that our net in migration will be 2,300 per year to 2040. urban populations will increase and rural populations, unfortunately, will decrease. So the median age for the province by 2040 will be about 50 years. And that median age, I mean, it sounds bad, but there are areas of the province that will have a median age at 63 or, you know, even in the high 60s. This is a map that was produced by the Department of Finance. So it actually shows the population change in Newfoundland. The red dots are the communities that have lost population and are losing population. And the blue dots are the communities that have gained population. And the size of the dot is correspondent to the number of populations. So the number of decrease and the number of increase. And the interesting thing is, if you look at those blue dots, there are some outliers, but most of those blue dots are communities like Clarenville that are regional centers and that are located along the Trans-Canada Highway. So, you know, most of the growth is projected to happen in Labrador and St. John's, but other regional centers will also see growth. All right, so questions. Anybody have any questions or comments or?
Paul Tilley has a comment. He says blue dots also correspond to where to find Tim Hortons.
Oh.
That's the telltale.
That's good to know. All's not lost yet. All right. Clear as mud. Shall we go on? You guys are really quiet.
Oh, wait, no, we got a few more comments.
Okay, perfect.
No, and actually Paul's saying this, no, he's actually serious. Corporations use the same information to locate their chains.
Okay.
Sean Taylor said, I'm interested to see as the housing crisis across the, or this is it, I'm interested to see this as the housing crisis across the country unfolds, the effects it has on us.
Yeah. Yeah, I think COVID has definitely thrown a wrench into the works. And, you know, for instance, a lot of that demographic, the stats, they're fluid and they change. The projections, the forecasting changes. In fact, Stats Canada's forecasts and our Department of Finance forecast for population growth changed within the last 3 or 4 months since I started the background report. And I ended up going back and changing, you know, the entire chapter about demographics in the background report, because the new projections are much better than they look like 4 months ago. And so those projections were done very recently. And I'm sure that, you know, those agencies will continue to do that, to redo those forecasts based on how things change with COVID. And, you know, at one point at the end of 2019 and early 2020, you know, the forecasts were really dire. When I saw them, I thought, oh my God, I can't share this with anybody. But, you know, so, I mean, it is looking better, and it makes sense that, you know, as people age and retire and unfortunately die, you know, there will be more jobs. For, you know, at least for the 20-year period. All right, so on to the vision statement. And as I said, the vision statement is something that is included in the municipal plan. And generally, you know, we look at other documents that have kind of posed vision statements. Usually it's the Integrated Community Sustainability Plan. You probably all remember, the councillors will remember and staff will remember that in about 2009, every community had to create an integrated community sustainability plan in order to access gas tax money. And one of the things during that exercise, and in those documents was to create a vision statement. So we'd like to start with something that's already, been established in the community, and then look at that and, work on that and make some adjustments if need be. So the vision statement, and we have a mission statement, came from some of those economic development strategy documents that I mentioned earlier. And we met with the Public Works and Planning Committee and shared, the vision statements, and there were adjustments made, and I think that the vision statement was also shared with council, and there were adjustments made. So the vision statement is: the town of Clarenville is a healthy and inclusive community where people, businesses, and ideas thrive among a strong sense of community. Our continued growth is built on our people, our partnerships, our strategic location, and a strong local and regional economy that is supported by the delivery of well-planned and managed municipal services and modern infrastructure. So, our question today is: this vision statement appropriate today? Do you agree with it? And we have a live poll. So cast your ballots, and Matthew will be able to tell us the results.
Feel free to sing the Jeopardy theme song in your head. Okay, looks like we've got as many votes as we're going to get, so I'm going to share the results.
All right, so 10% agreed that, 100%, 10 people who voted agreed that the vision statement is still appropriate today. All righty. Okay.
Perfect, thank you.
Whoops. All right, so back to the vision statement. Is it suitable for the next 10 years? And we have another live poll. So cast your ballots now.
Just give it a few more seconds. All right, this one, Lydia, is a little bit of a mixed bag.
Okay.
So the question was: is the statement suitable for the next 10 years? 75% feel yes, 13% say no, and 13% are not sure.
All right. So I'm interested, and maybe when we get to the question slide, I'm interested to find out why people think that it's not suitable for 10 years. So we'll talk about that when we get to the question slide. All right. Okay, so we also have a mission statement, and it reads: council will achieve its vision of long-term growth and sustainability by enabling residents to seize opportunities in the business, cultural, and recreation sectors. Council will accomplish this by promoting the unique characteristics of Clarenville, strengthening partnerships with residents, organizations, and surrounding communities, improving town infrastructure and service delivery, and advocating for the interests of the community. So, is this mission statement appropriate today? And we have another live poll.
Okay, well, thank you. We'll share those results. This time, the question was: is this statement still appropriate today? 78% feel yes, that it is, and 22% feel no, that it's not.
Okay. All right. And is the mission statement suitable for the next 10 years? And again, we have a poll.
Wow, this is really interesting results this time, Lydia.
Okay.
Give it another second. All right, so we'll share. This time we have 33% feel that yes, it is suitable. 44% feel that no, it is not suitable. And 22% said they are not sure.
Okay, wow.
Wow, that is interesting. Thank you for that.
Yeah. All right. So the people who felt that the vision statement isn't appropriate for the next 10 years, would you like to elaborate?
Yeah, we had a couple comments here while we're waiting for someone who may want to speak to raise their hand. Two comments actually said, should we add tourism as an opportunity? So there was a question in the Q&A on that, and there was a comment in the chat.
Okay. Okay. That might be a good idea. We're writing that down.
Yep.
Anybody else?
Sean has said, heck yes, we should. So Sean agrees.
Okay.
There's a comment here that the reference to modern infrastructure may not be valid in 10 years.
And I'm just wondering, may not be valid how?
We've got one follow-up comment, which is from a different person, but they're suggesting 10 years is a long time. Algorithms, artificial intelligence, the state of work, life is going to be very different in 10 years.
True.
Yeah, good comment. And we do have a raised hand, Lydia, so I'm going to
Okay.
go ahead and pass the floor over to Denise Leonard. Hi, Denise, we can hear you.
Hi, good, thanks. The picture that you showed was of a pond, or the harbor, obviously, with just a few houses around it. If you're planning, you know, growth for your rural areas, shouldn't you have included at some point, or, you know, or talked about, you know, because like they were saying, the next 10 years is a long ways away, but, you know, should we have a walkway in there? Should there be more housing? Like, there was just 2 or 3 houses with a pond. So that's really hard to vote on as of, is this okay for the next 10 years? You know what I'm saying? Like, it should have been probably a different photo. If you're wanting to capture growth, I don't think that was an appropriate picture.
Oh, okay. I guess we never connected the two. We just used pictures that we had of Clarenville, you know, that were nice pictures, and just as
Absolutely, and it is beautiful. The harbor is beautiful, and but if we're projecting and we want growth and to improve the community, you know, maybe we should have drawn in there, or you know, a walkway with you know, with more housing on it, you know, other than just the harbor with minimal housing behind it.
all
And
right.
to project something over the next 10 years, you can't really do anything with the harbor. Like, what do you project to do in the harbor? You know, we certainly don't need to clean it up. I personally feel that the Shoal Harbor and the ocean is as clean as we possibly can make it, or as clean as anywhere else in the world.
Yeah, well, thank you for the comments, Denise. We really weren't projecting anything with the photograph. It was just a photograph that we used as a place builder, and maybe it was the wrong one, but it was, you know, the photograph and the question, or the photograph and the vision, or the mission statement weren't related in any way.
Okay, thanks, Denise. We did have a question here in the Q&A, or in the chat, sorry. Somebody was wondering if we can cycle back a few slides to look at the statements again.
Sure.
Might help to jog some people's memories. There you go.
All right, we'll just go back. Whoops. I don't think, oh, there we go. Okay, so there's the vision statement. Okay. So does anybody need a little more time, or should I move on? Okay, I'll take that as a
I think
yes.
you can move on. Yeah, I think
Yeah.
the mission statement was the one that seemed to trigger more comments in the chat and stuff.
Okay, so there's the mission statement.
This was the, I think it was the bullet list, Lydia, the one
Yeah.
where a lot of people thought maybe that's where tourism could fit in.
Yep, yeah, and that makes good sense. All right. And then, so this question, is this appropriate today, is not related to the picture. It's related to the mission statement, and it's just the picture that we use because we try to use different pictures in different areas of town. So maybe there was some misunderstanding that this question related to what you're seeing on the screen as the photograph, but it's relating to the text from the previous slide.
These are the trials and tribulations of engaging by Zoom.
Yeah.
One of the shortfalls for sure.
Yeah. Yeah, and likewise here, you know, is it suitable for the next 10 years? Not related to the picture, but related to the text. All right. Any other discussion? Anybody wish to send a chat or say anything? Okay. All right, so next we're going to talk about some of the emerging topics, and I'm sure this will be lively. I'm sure everybody has seen this scenario. All right, so in terms of current land use, this is sort of an abbreviated list, but these are some of the land uses that are, you know, obvious. There's residential uses, mixed development, commercial, industrial, recreation, open space, conservation, environmental protection, mineral working, public use, which is often things like public buildings and civic uses, and transportation uses. So transportation is not a zone, but it's an important use because we need a transportation network to connect everything together. All right, so we from the background report and dealing with, you know, what we heard from stakeholders and what we got as results from the survey, there were sort of 7 topic areas that they became evident that are related to growth and sustainability of the community. So they're environment and protect the environment, mitigate climate change effects, sea level rise, erosion, flooding, etc. So mitigate those and development. Population growth, we want to retain residents and we want to attract young people and provide services for an aging population. In terms of economy, you know, it's sort of looking at business, cultivating a small business friendly reputation, providing or searching for meaningful employment opportunities to attract and retain residents and encourage small businesses that cater to residents. And from a residential standpoint, you know, a variety of housing types and housing that is affordable to seniors and young people. Recreation, maintaining existing trails. Trails came up often and are a very important component and very, very important to residents. The idea of creating some multi-use trails and linking trails with sidewalks. Tourism, some discussion about developing White Hills for summer uses in tourism. There was some discussion about upgrading the marina as well to enable residents, enable more resident use and for boaters, and kind of quality of life. And a lot of these factors really point to quality of life and you know, enhancing the quality of life of residents through suitable housing, through community amenities and social harmony. So we'll talk more about each of these as we go on. So in terms of the environment, as I said earlier, the ILUC committee, the Intergovernmental Land Use Committee, has also flagged these things as being very important and talks about in their report the interrelated functions of these environmental issues and challenges and climate change. And the Department of Environment and Climate Change in municipalities has been doing a lot of research and data collection and, you know, so climate change and its effects are a provincial interest and need to be addressed. All right. I guess another factor that comes into play, you know, is addressing climate change and flooding. You know, Clarenville had some flooding last December, which I think was a bit unusual, but you know, there has been flooding in the recent past. Sea level rise and coastal erosion are effects that also need to be addressed. Now, the ILUC report does say that there is less coastal erosion along the coastline of Clarenville than other municipalities have witnessed. We also are seeing some capacity issues, water and sanitary sewer and storm sewer. These can also be affected by flooding. Clear cutting and quarrying and development on steep slopes without mitigation measures. As you saw in that picture with the quarrying are becoming issues too that residents have mentioned. And you know, we want to look at what kind of sustainability measures can the community adopt and maintained to preserve the environment and likewise then the quality of life. Okay, so in terms of forestry activities, we have some domestic logging, which is a permitted use. There's some concerns also about clear cutting too close to built up areas. You know, there's been discussion about requiring more selected harvesting plans that are, especially where it's close to recreation areas and developed areas. Preserving forested buffers and viewscapes, and using a forestry management approach. So there are a number of quarries as well, and you know there were a lot of concerns about that, and many residents have described it as that moonscape kind of effect, and how you know that needs to be controlled and mitigated. And you know some of these areas need to be reconstituted and reinstated. All right, and steep slopes, again, as mentioned in the ILUC report. And, you know, it's one of the challenges that Clarenville has, because you have so much land that is steep, that, you know, the topography suddenly rises very steeply. And there are, you know, building on steep slopes obviously has detrimental effects in terms of stormwater runoff, soil erosion, changes to subsurface water flow. And there are, you know, there are standards, and there's engineering advice and engineering types of parameters that talk about, you know, what type of slopes you can build on the steepness of the slope. So anything that's 25% and over, the environmental impacts are not manageable. Slopes that are 10 to 15%, you know, sometimes may be manageable depending on the use. Some of those might need to be looked at on a case-by-case basis in order to make sure that environmental impacts are mitigated. You know, so some solutions might require a geotechnical engineered solution, and there might be some criteria that will help council decide, you know, how and what to approve on slopes that are 10 to 15%, based on, you know, science and a rationale. The other issue with steep slopes, of course, is the installation of roads, water, sewer, emergency access, snow plow, and garbage collection. Those can also cause limitations. So again, these are things that you know we will address from this study and in the municipal plan and the development regulations. All right, any questions?
Just one question here from Denise. She said, can you go back one slide to speak about areas that are being contested?
I don't, is this a slide? One slide? I don't know of any areas that are being contested. I don't know if any of the councillors or staff can speak to that.
Or certainly feel free, Denise, to raise your hand and we can unmute you to help clarify that.
Okay.
Question here. Go back one more slide.
Okay, the quarrying slide.
Okay, we got Denise has got her hand up here now, so
Okay.
We'll turn the floor over to you, Denise.
So
There you go.
Hi, it says 3 controversial sites: Shoal Harbour, Shoal Harbour Drive, Balboa Drive, and Huntley Drive. That's the quarries.
Oh, right, yeah. Right.
There's quarries there on Shoal. Are there 3 quarries on each individual drive?
No, 3 in total.
Yeah, there's one on Shoal Harbour Drive, one on Balboa, and one on Huntley.
I believe so.
Okay,
Lydia,
yeah.
Lydia, if I may there, I believe the reference to Balboa Drive and Huntley Drive are subdivisions
Okay, yeah.
that are, there was a lot of boreal material taken to develop these subdivisions, and the appearance are, in some cases, that they have, or people that do perceive them as quarries.
Oh, okay. Okay, yeah. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Denise.
Yeah. All right.
Thank you, Rick, for clarifying that.
Yes, thank you.
Problem.
Okay, so we talked a little bit about this before, about the population growth and the areas that are going to receive or to gain population. And so obviously there are going to be some challenges in the next 20 or so years for all of us. But, what does this mean for Clarenville? Well, you've had good steady growth. Because you're a regional center, you will probably continue to see that kind of growth due to in-migration. As I said earlier, you'll still continue to see seniors moving in the next short term, in the next few years. And younger people, as jobs become available, I think it'll be easier for you to attract younger people when there are good jobs, and also to retain your own young people. Natural decline, which is death, will create opportunities in the job market. And, young people will be seeking, or middle-aged people will be seeking employment. And those employment opportunities are in healthcare related services, home support, pharmaceuticals. So there will be a supply and demand imbalance in the labor market. All right, so I think, in order to continue attracting, well, I guess, it's a good thing to continue attracting retirees, because that means that eventually they're going to give up jobs. And I know, every community we deal with always says, no, we don't want any more old people, we want young people. But, the older generations are the ones that, are actually going to create the jobs. So in order to retain young people and to attract new young people, they need good jobs. They need good quality, employment, full-time employment, affordable entry-level housing. This provides Clarenville also with, entrepreneurial opportunities for business startups. Make sure that, you've got good amenities, because people want good amenities if they're moving. And, perhaps it's time to think about hiring an economic development specialist who, can help you to capitalize on the potential jobs, and to, attract those young people to Clarenville. And you need somebody, in my opinion, who's not only, a wizard at economic development, but also has really good social media skills. And the other thing that I think Clarenville has an opportunity to do is to kind of jump out ahead of the province and start attracting COVID refugees. That's what they're called. But, New Brunswick and Nova Scotia have already started advertising campaigns where, they're focusing on attracting people to a safe community, a community that has not a lot of COVID, that is safe in other ways as well, where you can work from home and you know, and still have a good lifestyle and probably pay a lot less for your housing as well. It's also an opportunity for council and for the town to work with CONA and other education agencies to make sure that they're offering the kinds of training that young people, you know, that are finishing high school today and tomorrow can get training for the jobs that will come open in the future. And to work with developers in terms of, you know, housing stock and maybe different kinds of housing and good entry-level housing that's affordable, good quality entry-level housing. Okay, there's also the opportunity, like I said, to support local businesses, you know, perhaps hosting a business incubation workshop and attracting and promoting young entrepreneurs. You know, there's the opportunity for adaptive reuse of buildings for a business incubator, for multi-unit housing, as I said, different types of housing, and also seniors independent housing developments. I attended a CMHC Zoom workshop last week that talked about a lot of sort of effects of COVID and what that means for kind of new housing models and new housing styles. So one thing that's coming up is that, you know, the idea of building multi-unit housing, apartment dwellings with amenities such as communal or shared office space on the ground floor, so that those who work from home can actually get out of their apartment and still, you know, be in their own building, but have, you know, have an office space that's, you know, not in their apartment, so they have a bit of change of scenery. And also housing that is, you know, a garden entry where it could be semi-detached with garden spaces. I think the idea, you know, is that we all have to start thinking outside of the box. So in terms of kind of long-term residential, you know, we've identified areas between Shoal Harbour Drive and the Trans-Canada Highway. There is water and sewer available now from the Shoal Harbour Drive area that can be used to connect. Potentially a small area between the TCH, Moores Road Extension, Tilly Drive and Terra Nova Drive. An industrial development can be extended or can happen behind the St. Jude's Hotel area. Again, there's the potential there for water and sewer hookup, given some upgrades. Or no, sorry. There's also the potential for water and sewer upgrades and stormwater management that, you know, needs to be done kind of throughout the town. All right. And so resident, oops. Yeah, so over 73% of the town's housing stock is single detached housing, and that will probably continue to be the main form of housing and housing type. But there is the ability to look at row housing and different types of housing, and even you know, small apartment buildings. So as I mentioned a couple of slides ago, different housing types, different price points, and you know, even increasing density in terms of infill, so that we're taking advantage of existing water and sewer, and you know, not creating as much sprawl. And, you know, we have to think about our young people, and we have to think about sort of affordable housing for young people and affordable housing and rental units for the 55+ age group. All right. Any questions? Anything, Matthew?
Not seeing any questions in the chat or any raised hands.
Okay. All right. Moving right along. This is a long slideshow. You've been very patient. Okay, recreation and open space. So, you know, Clarenville is very fortunate to be in a position where there's a really good mix of recreation and cultural amenities. You know, a lot of superb trails and some like the trailway are actually provincially owned, but some good trails, some good opportunities, parks, playgrounds, sports fields, and you know, and the like. Now, in the background report, I know that some of you looked at it very carefully, and I mistakenly, and I think I got confused with some of my discussions with stakeholders, but I had incorrectly said that there are 90 kilometers of trail for the three kind of main trails, the Rotary Trail, the Shoal Harbor Trail, and the Bear Mountain Trail. And in fact, that's a mistake. I think that the 90 came from, you know, someone who talked about all of the trails and included, which it would have included the Nordic trails at White Hills and the trail and the trailway. So the recreation director has put me straight, and so there are approximately 20 kilometers of trail. The Bear Mountain Trail is 5 kilometers, Rotary Trail is 8, Shoal Harbor Trail is 3, and the Wellness Trail, which although closed, there are plans to upgrade it, is 3 kilometers. So yeah, trails seem to be a very important recreational activity for residents. There are some challenges. Some of the trails are on private land and there's some encroachment of uses. And as we know, the trailway is provincial land. There were a lot of comments to pave the trailway, but unfortunately that's a provincial jurisdiction. So there were comments about, you know, upgrading and maintaining trails, the need for some new trails and multi-use trails, maybe some more parks, community gardens, and connecting sidewalks and trails where possible, and kind of planning a sidewalk hierarchy and installation of sidewalks. Now, the town generally does install sidewalks on at least one side of streets, and you know, there may need to be some adjustment in some areas, maybe both sides. I also looked at the the recreation master plan, which talked about a trail master plan for subdivisions, which down the road is probably a good idea. And although the recreation master plan talked about how the town should create these trails and take accept the land that developers have to cede to the communities. So LPP stands for Lands for Public Purposes. In each new subdivision, the developer must cede 10% of the land to the community for recreation purposes, or the community can take cash in lieu of. And we always recommend take the cash. Then it allows you to determine the kind of development and the standards for development, you know, especially if it's trails. And in terms of tourism and recreation, so there was a lot of kind of talk about promoting and enhancing, you know, the cultural venues that are already there, like the East Link Center, capitalizing on the golf courses in the region as well, and really promoting those golf courses as, you know, close to Clarenville and something that people can come and participate in when they come to visit Clarenville. There was a lot of positive comment about developing summer uses at White Hills, both for residents and for visitors. Some of the ideas were for biking and fat bike biking and paddle boats, picnicking, that kind of thing. And then there's been a lot of discussion, and I put it in this category because it didn't really know where else to put it. But, you know, enhancing the community with landscaping, the appearance of the community with landscaping, signage, lighting, sidewalks, benches, and the like. Now, more importantly, we should be doing that, you know, for residents and to make our community look more attractive. But it does have an impact on tourism. And it, you know, when the community looks well landscaped and groomed and well taken care of, it is attractive to visitors, and it is something that visitors will, you know, will tell their friends that, oh, you know, it's a pretty community, it's got this, it's got that. Alrighty. So I think there's you know, all of these factors sort of play into one's own definition of quality of life, and quality of life factors are important to us as residents of a community. You know, the quality of life contributes. There are factors that contribute to quality of life are, you know, those amenities that we have around us, the degree of satisfaction we have with our work or our main activity, and our standard of living, our schools, our amenities, you know, the degree of satisfaction we have with our families and friends, and our health. You know, our sense of belonging to the community is very important. The more that you feel you belong, the more vested you are in your community. Satisfaction with life in general. And, you know, from what we've seen, residents report a good quality of life in Clarenville. All right, any questions? No,
Not seeing any questions.
Nothing?
Oh, sorry, we got one raised hand. Just allow me to pass this over. So this is Denise Leonard. Hi Denise, we can hear you.
Thank you. I'm actually a friend of the family sitting here with Denise. And Lydia, thank you for the comprehensive presentation, very detailed and informative. I take from your presentation that there's been a lot of interest expressed for trails, and what I'm thinking is our green spaces, and, you know, maybe improving and connecting the existing trails. Is that correct?
Yes, I think you're right. There's definitely a lot of interest in trails, and you know, upgrading trails, maintaining trails, and making sure that they're available, you know, for all types of users. And I think that, you know, a lot of that probably stems, it's probably enhanced because of COVID, and because, you know, we want to be able to walk outside comfortably.
Yeah. While there is this interest, do you see an opportunity for rezoning land adjacent to the Bear Trail to potentially a residential development of some sort?
You know, we haven't gotten that far, but we can certainly look at that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, we're always interested in, you know, those sorts of comments and you know, options, and that's something that we can look at when we you know, start to look in depth at the municipal plan and the development regulations, and kind of, you know, the future and more future growth.
So here's Denise now. When are you sending this to the provincial body to have it approved? Or is this just an enlightenment for the residents of Shoal Harbour, Clarenville?
Well, we
Is there a strategic plan for the next 10 years?
pardon me?
Is this the strategic plan for the next 10 years?
No, this is the municipal plan.
Municipal plan.
Yes, the municipal plan and the zoning regulation. So we are now doing a municipal plan review, is, especially for a larger community, is a fairly lengthy process. So yes, we have kind of, this will be the completion of kind of our phase 1.5. And once we finish this, then we're looking at the current documents in
Yes.
more detail and in more depth. And given the commentary that we've received, taking those comments and looking at, all right, what needs to be adjusted here? So that's not only the municipal plan, it's the development regulations and the 2 sets of mapping. So
Okay.
it's a lengthy process. Now, we hope, our goal, we've been trying to fast track this as fast as we can. And our goal is to submit the documents to the minister before the municipal election.
And
So
when is the municipal election?
in September.
Fall. Okay,
Yeah,
great.
in
Yeah.
September, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, so, you know, we've been working diligently and we've been trying to, you know, get sort of really push ourselves and push this process. And so this is kind of the culmination of that information gathering discovery phase. And generally we hold this kind of public forum in person. And then there will be another opportunity when we have the documents upgraded and the mapping upgraded. We will meet with council first and get their opinion, and then we will take it back to the public and get public opinion. So right now we don't have a date for that yet, but we're hoping it's sometime this summer.
Okay, lovely. Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Denise. We have a couple other questions, Lydia, before you go on with the slides. You mentioned a moment ago that this is probably phase 1.5.
Yeah.
Aaron was wondering how many phases are there?
There's, gosh, about 3 or 4. Sorry, I can't even remember off the top of my head, but you know, as I said just a few minutes ago, and I have a slide, you know, kind of farther down that talks about one of our ending slides talks about next steps and the work plan. But, you know, it's always the first thing we always do is the background report. I mean, generally we come out, and we did do this before, I guess last September, when we were hired, when we were in alert level 2, we did come out. And we drove around the town and we marked up maps and we took photographs. We met with Public Works and Planning Committee, and then we started working immediately on upgrading maps and also on this background report. And the background report takes a lot of time because, you know, it's the last background report was done 10 years ago. So, you know, so it's a lot of information and data that needs to be sifted through and read and then, you know, written up and stuff. And then sort of, like I say, after this phase, then we look at the municipal plan, we look at the land use planning map, we look at the development regulations and the zoning map, and we meet with council to review those. And then we meet with the public for a public review.
And one last question from Aaron was regarding, I forget the, you said what LLP stands for?
LPP is lands for public purposes.
Okay, and he was wondering about the monies that were available for the LPP. His question is, is that cash designated to upgrading and creating public areas only?
Yes, LPP stands for lands for public purposes. So let's say, you know, we have a developer who is developing a residential subdivision. That developer, according to the Urban and Rural Planning Act, that developer must cede 10% of the land to the municipality for lands for public purposes, which is generally in a residential subdivision would generally be used for recreation. The council has the right to say, no, we don't want the land. We want that land. We want cash. So whatever that piece of land, whatever the market value of that piece of land is, you know, we want the cash for that instead. And then the municipality takes that and the municipality decides how it's going to, what kind of recreation it wants. And the municipality can then, determine whether, are we going to do a trail master plan, and we're going to have trails that connect, all new subdivisions together and connect them to another trail system. Are we going to, do we want a park? Do we want a tot lot? And so on. So the land, I think, is basically dedicated towards some kind of public or recreation purpose. Pardon me.
That's great.
Okay.
That's it for the questions.
All right. So our next section is about the zoning maps, and we have a number of maps to show you. And my colleague, Reg, will talk about this section.
Excellent. Okay, thank you very much, Lydia, and good evening, everyone. What you see in front of you now is a copy of the land use zoning map, which we call updated and corrected. What I mean by that is that we have brought forward all the amendments that were approved by council since 2010. We have updated all the land use zone. We've used things like Google Earth surveys, land surveys, our own surveys. And what we've done to make it beneficial is to color it for council, the different land use zones, so they stand out. You can tell at a glance what each zone is. Now, the reason we show this large map is to give you an idea. If you notice the large black lines intermixed through the map, these are contour lines. And where they're close together like that indicates very steep slopes and unsuitable for development. So what we're going to do now is take a number of small areas throughout the town, probably a half dozen slides, and show you how the development patterns have taken place, taking into account the slopes and zoning and things like that. Okay, next slide, please. So this doesn't say much, but it's CDA residential, and what that means that this is land set aside for future development. The reason I show this slide is that this area contains 2.65 kilometers in area. So this is an area just a little bit north of the Trans-Canada Highway, bound by Shoal Harbour Drive and the Shoal Harbour River. And there's enough land here for the next number of years to take care of future residential. You'll see red lines intermixed throughout there. These are our own lines. They indicate slope percentages, give us indicative what kind of area the land is and whether it's suitable for residential development. Next slide, please. So what we've shown here, just to give an example, this is Memorial Drive and Manitoba Drive, and to give you an idea of the different land uses that's taking place within town. You got mixed public utilities and public use in the middle there, mixed use, residential, commercial general. And what is interesting is that just about all the land is of use. It's been developed for different uses. There's very little vacant land there. A little bit area there, the mixed use. And again, we put the zone line or the slope line in there to give indicate of the percentage of slope. And quickly you find that was not developed was because of excessive slope. But all this area, just about every little bit of land has been utilized over time. This is the heart of the community right now. Next slide, please. So again, this area here is it Prince? What's that say here, Prince? It's up by the Irving.
I know where it is. Yeah, it's up by the Irving. It's a new street there. The reason I show this slide is that if you up there behind Irving, you'll see how quickly it falls off in behind the street there, that street extension. And over time, there may be difficulty there, but what the town has to do and what developers have to do is manage and control slope and slippage for soil and erosion. And this is done like with gabion baskets. In the middle where it says RES, you again see the lines close together, the contour lines, indicates excessive slope. So in all likelihood, that land would be unsuitable for residential development. But you can see very quickly that just about all the land is being utilized and very little
on the open space there. This is just north of Trans-Canada there behind the river. Next slide, please. So this is Terranova Drive area, and what's interesting here is that the environmental protection zone there in the green, you notice how the black lines are very, very close together. So that indicates steep, very steep slope there, and the percentages there are like 26, 28%, things like that. The residential zone in yellow, again, just about all the land is utilized, and the public use to the north there, the field there is also utilized. So again, there's very little land in the community that is, not utilized. But if it is open space, it's because of its excessive slopes. Next slide, please. This is over in the Shoal Harbor area, and there's an example of what we call terracing. This is like Percy Drive area, and the slopes start off gradual, about 12%, which is a little at the top end of manageable. But once you get in the gray area, which is rural, it takes off a little higher, 14.7%. But again, this is the kind of development would have to be terraced, like roads going straight back may have difficulty with runoff, water, things like that. If you're living downstream, you might have problems with water from the upper side of development. You may get some problems with erosion, particularly if you clear cut all the land. So, this is pretty much maxed out regards to slope. The areas that can be developed, is above the open areas is not really suitable for residential development. Next slide, please. Again, this is the heart of the community. Again, this is Memorial Drive, Somerville Heights area. What's interesting here is the different land uses here. We get environmental protection there in light green, open space is dark green. To the left there, the residential zone, you see there's hardly any development there at all. This could be accessed from Thompson Street there off of Manitoba Drive. And this is the land that I guess right now is suitable for development based on demand. But that residential zone is fairly large and contain a fair number of residential dwellings. Again, to the right side there of Memorial Drive, you see that again everything is pretty much developed in the heart of the community. Is the way most communities develop from spiral out, and not too much land there available for future development. Next slide, Lydia, please. This is Balboa Drive over getting in the Shoal Harbor area. Again, we got this large environmental protection because of the slope. But what's interesting, on top of the hill there, we have a residential zone already established, and you can see it's fairly flat land. And again, it's kind of difficult to develop these large slope areas. So any movement there would be very challenging to get development in there. Okay.
All
So
right.
that's just a few slides to give you an idea of the way the zoning is interspersed with different land use zones and the challenges that the town faces in allowing new development to go forward based on the topography. Is it's a hilly terrain out there, and there's not much you really can do with it. So, is there any questions on the zoning?
Well, we have one raised hand, Reg.
Okay.
So this is Denise Leonard. Go ahead, Denise.
Hi, Reg. Thank you for your presentation. Reg, being a resident in Newfoundland, not only does Clarenville and Shoal Harbor have steep hills, but as does St. John's, Corner Brook, all of Newfoundland basically has, been developed on hills and rocks, like, Signal Hill, for example, Down in Logie Bay, there's steep slopes. Over in Corner Brook, there's steep slopes. In Clarenville, there's steep slopes. Why? I know that, like, has there been, your consulting company took on this job, has there been in the last 35 years that much flooding and erosion of rock and what else do we say, landslides and whatever in the last 35 years in Clarenville that would limit development of the Clarenville Shoal Harbor area, when, one of the main objectives of the town itself is to promote growth and development.
Okay. I can't speak to the last 35 years, but I kind of go forward basis. I can address, the steep slopes and possible areas of slippage. One of the things that we encourage in our plans is stormwater management and zero net runoff. And what that means is that if development is going to take place, one of the problems with development is clear cutting, and because the trees hold the water back, and once the trees are gone, you have erosion and runoff, and an adverse effect on adjoining properties that could be downstream or downhill. So if you're going to allow development, it has to take into account water runoff, grades of streets, it's suggested. And again, this is a provincial interest as well as municipal interest. As Lydia alluded to earlier, the ILUC report, the Interdepartmental Land Use Committee, is also looking at stormwater management and zero net runoff in communities, and discourages development above, say, 15% slope.
Aren't there, excuse me for interrupting, aren't there engineering companies out there to come in and consult the developers on, without destroying the environment and continuing to protect the environment? Isn't there a proper way, or, these consulting engineering companies can advise developers on the proper development of such slopes?
Yes, you're quite right. We call them geotechnical engineers.
Exactly, yeah.
And we ask for what we call a geotechnical survey, where the onus is on the engineer and developer to prove to the town that this development can take place without any adverse effect on adjoining properties or any detrimental damage to existing streets or roads or things like that. But that's on a case-by-case basis, it's not just
right. But wouldn't it be astute of any consultation company to, given the layout of Newfoundland and Labrador, wouldn't it be astute of any consultation company, given the layout of Newfoundland and Labrador, if we were to do that, I'm sure there would be a lot of areas, rural and urban, that wouldn't be allowed to be developed. So we're cutting off our nose to spite our face. I know we want growth. I know we want in-migration and whatever, but there's a proper way to develop. And if we cut off, the ability to allow people to develop, well, that goes against the grain of our strategic planning.
Well, you say we cut off our nose and spite our face. I say we learn through our mistakes, and that development that has taken place in the past has not necessarily been the best development for that area. But,
how can we comment on that? Even though do we have any evidence of flooding in the last 35 years for this particular area and or other areas of Newfoundland and Labrador that have been developed on steep grades?
The Department of Environment, Climate Change and Municipalities does, and they have you know, not only flooding, rainfall events, the severity and the frequency of rainfall events is increasing, which is causing more flooding and more flash flooding and events that haven't occurred before. They also have information and data about avalanches, rock falls, rock slides, and the rest of that. So when the ILUC report, you know, that the ILUC report is based on that kind of evidence that the province has. So, you know, we as planners, you know, look at that information, we share it with the community, we share it with council, and, you know, we determine where potential growth can occur and maybe areas where it shouldn't occur. Now, you know, proponents are always welcome to get opinions from geotechnical engineers and to determine, you know, if there are mitigative ways to develop land. And in some instances there are. In some instances it may be cost prohibitive. But, you know, there are also many, or there are examples of where development has occurred and then created, you know, problems, either with contamination of well water, you know, stormwater, drainage type problems, you know, so there has to be a balance. There has to be, you know, some.
Well, i.e. an example of that is the flatland there in Badger, and that's flatland.
Some examples of where flooding has occurred through steep slopes, Gamble, Placentia, Stephenville in the last 10, 15 years.
Yeah.
I mean, we recall when Hurricane Igor passed through, roads everywhere got washed out, you know, just because there's no infrastructure in place to contain that kind of runoff for such a massive flooding, runoff, quick flooding.
Yeah, but Reg,
So
with
this is what I'm saying. We have to learn from our mistakes.
oh, absolutely, and I agree.
Oops.
Something just happened.
Denise, if you can hear us, somehow you got cut off, but if you want to unmute, you certainly can.
Yeah. Oh,
There you
sorry. I was
You're
saying, yeah, thank you. Did you hear my last comment before you said that I said, you know, examples of flooding would be on the flatland over in Badger. And then I heard Reg saying, yes, some examples would be Placentia, Gambo, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. But
That's
what I'm
where we lost
saying,
you. Yep.
so, and thank you for that. But with proper mitigation and geotechnical engineering, it would be possible, if safe to do so, to develop steep slopes if indeed it was approved by geotechnical engineering. Am I correct in saying that?
We don't know, you know, maybe, possibly, you know, we're not geotechnical engineers, unfortunately.
No, that's right. Yeah, but I'm saying with, you know, yeah. Okay, great. Thank you. That's all.
There is the potential. Yes, there is the potential. We don't know what that potential is, but you know, that potential can also be very expensive. So there's always a cost benefit analysis as well.
Thanks, Denise.
All right, moving right along.
No,
Okay.
there's no other questions. Yeah.
Okay. All right, so at this point, we have sort of some questions, and I don't know how well this is going to work because typically we sort of have some topics, some questions that we ask the audience before we send everybody off to look at the zoning maps and, you know, give us their opinions and mark up the maps. So typically what we do this kind of presentation. It's usually much shorter than this. But we do, you know, the what is planning, all the things we've heard, the background. And then generally we ask people to come and, you know, look at the maps, mingle. We have maps on a table, you know, several tables. We have red dots and green dots. We ask people to put green dots on the things that they really like about their community and write on a sticky note or write on the map what it is they're identifying, what they like. You know, things you like about your community, things you want to keep, and then, you know, things that you don't like. So we ask people to put a red dot on something that they don't like or doesn't work well, and again, to write a note. And so we ask these kinds of questions that you see on the screen here. You know, are there things that don't work so well? Are there amenities or opportunities you wish your community had? What are they? Are there things that community has too much of? So, you know, this can kind of be a bit of a free-for-all if you feel like chiming in. Like I said, I don't know how well this works without actually allowing people to stand over a map and mark it up and talk to us. But we thought, well, for what it's worth, we'll try and maybe we'll get some comments. So if anybody wants to chime in, please feel free. And if not, that's okay too.
We had one question pop up here in the chat. Aaron is wondering if it will be possible to email these questions to the attendees, and maybe they can respond.
Sure.
Once they have the opportunity to think about it a little bit more.
Sure, absolutely. That's a great idea. And also, you know, if anybody thinks about something that they, you know, you go home, you mull it over, you think about something at 3 o'clock in the morning when you can't sleep, you know, you can always email us with your questions too. Okay, and actually there are a couple of more questions, and this is more about process and, you know, the application process for building permit or development permit. Is it clear? Is it straightforward? Are the current planning documents clear and straightforward? You know, is the development control process straightforward? And you know, those might be things that we can also send this, and people can respond, you know, in your own time. Any comments? Any questions?
Not seeing any hands or anything in the chat.
Okay. All right, gosh, we might be on time here. Okay, so this is the last couple of slides. So our next steps in our work plan. So now we'll go back and revise the background report and finalize that. We'll start drafting the new municipal plan and development regulations, and we'll meet with the Public Works Committee and with Council when we have those drafts to review them and make sure that Council sees them and is happy with them, and make any revisions that Council identifies. And then at that point, we will have a public review, and the manner of that review obviously will be COVID dependent. We are hoping that we can have this public review in August, and that we will still be in alert level 2, and that we will be able to do it in person, which would make things, you know, much easier for all of us. And what we will do as well is make sure that the draft documents are posted on the community's website, so that residents have a chance to see them and the mapping prior to the public review, the hopefully in-person review. And then once those documents are ready and everyone's happy with them, we've made the revisions, Council gives its blessing, then we send them to the minister for what is called the Section 15 review. And when those documents are released by the minister, then again, there may be some revisions, maybe not. And then at that point, the municipality will be able to advertise for the mandated advertisement for the public hearing of objections. And if there are written objections received, then the municipality hires a commissioner, and depending on, again, COVID, there may or may not be an in-person public hearing. And then after that, the final documents are submitted to the province. They're gazetted and they're registered. And it's only when those documents are gazetted that they come into effect and the municipality can use them. All right, so stay tuned for future engagement opportunities. And like I said, you know, this will be COVID dependent, but we will advertise those on the town website and the Facebook page. And when documents are uploaded, those will be, you know, we'll advertise that those are available for review. And like I said, our goal, you know, our goal is late August or sometime before the election. We would like to have those documents into the minister. All right, that's it. But if anybody has any questions, you know, or you want to make any comments, please feel free. You know, that's 81 slides we went through and a lot of discussion and just, you know, about 2 minutes over 2 hours. So
That's pretty good.
it's pretty good. That was a lot of slides. But, you know, feel free to comment and, you know, give us your opinions now, or we will definitely send those slides with the questions, the topic slides on to everyone who participated.
Oh, we have one raised hand here.
Okay.
Yep. I think this is a council.
Hello,
Hi
can
there.
you hear me? It's Keith.
Oh, yes, we can hear you.
I just like to say thank you for the presentation. I learned a lot about the process and how like at the beginning I had trouble envisioning how the plan would roll out into something that tangible that you could work on as a municipality. But I can certainly see from the information you provided that it certainly does give you a direction you can work in and things to think about. I learned a lot. So
Oh, good.
look forward to the final result.
Oh, good. Well, excellent. Thank you. Always
Thank you
nice
very
to
much.
hear that somebody's learned something.
Every day is a learning day. Yes.
Yeah.
All right. Not seeing any other comments. Lots of thank yous. Very informative presentation.
Oh, lovely.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And thank you for your patience. This is, you know, it's a lot of concepts to go through in a very limited time via, you know, virtual means. And, you know, and it's hard to sort of judge when you can't see people's faces and how people are reacting to things. So, you know, it's planning is not easy, you know. Planning is great, you know. I always say you can ask 5 planners in a room to answer one question and you'll get 25 different answers and opinions. But you know, it's an interesting subject, and you know, that's how we plan our towns.
Okay.
Alrighty.
Thank you again, everybody. I'll go ahead and end the webinar.
Yeah. Thanks, everyone. And stay tuned for future opportunities.
Thank you.